Hello, this is Victor. I'm here with a new weekly painting, and this time instead of because I'm out of my studio, my painting corner, so I would like to talk a little bit about freehand and giving some tips about freehand and how, if you're scared, how to start to doing some freehand, and from there start being better and better on freehand painting. So the first thing that is important on freehand first, you need to have a lot of brush control. So freehand, there is a lot of brush control. If you don't have brush control, you're going to be very difficult to do it. Okay, the other point is that so to have a good brush control, you need two things at least. Well, three things. First, you need a good brush, a brush that have a nice tip, very thin finishing, because if you go with a brush that is quite damaged, it's going to be quite difficult to have good control. Second, you need the paint to be quite fluid. If it's too thick, it's going to be difficult to make the drawing or make the pattern that you want to do. But cannot be so thin, so like water that is running everywhere. So you need the right dilution to be sure that the paint is going where you want, where you apply the brush. So you need to apply the brush with very little pressure, and the paint have to go there. The way to practice is you try to make a line on a paper, a straight line. If you can make the straight line and the straight line is not spreading out, is good. If the line is breaking, it means that the paint is too thick. If the line is much wider than what you were expecting and the paint starts spreading out, is that the paint is too thin for the work that you want to do. Okay, let's go now to the freehand. So this is the first thing I want to show. So here the freehand is very little. It's just on the shoulder pad. So the first way to start practicing to do freehand on a miniature is just doing these very easy patterns. Fire is a very nice example, or this type of geometric fire. There's this type of freehand, and you will see this on the next one. It's going to be very easy to do, quite straightforward, and everybody can do this type of freehand. You can also add, as I did here, some shading. This will add a next level on your brush control. So you paint the main pattern like that, and then you do just the white lines over the yellow. This is a very easy one. Another way to practice the freehand, and maybe it looks quite a little bit weird, but this is also done by freehand, right? All these like scratches and where the paint have been. So first you apply the silver and the black, and then you apply the silver on top. So this is another way to practice the freehand. So I really recommend to start with these very easy shapes that does not have too much repetition. That is, you can make it here and there on the miniature, and these are very useful to start having confidence on doing very easy and straightforward freehand. Other examples here. So for example, very easy tattoo here. Just it's giving this detail. But the other thing is that I put these methods to show these are other type of freehand that is very easy, straightforward, and quite nice to look. So this is like a tiger pattern, and you can take a picture of any type of piece of cloth or a fur of animal and try to imitate. Here you only need some precision, but if you make a mess up, it's not going to be a big problem, because there is not really, you want to be, you don't need a geometrical symmetry. This has to be a little bit, yeah, I would say the pattern cannot be repetitive too much. The same here, okay? This type of patterns is another way to start practicing your brush control and to start with very easy ways to start practicing freehand. So this is a way for me to show you that you can start with very easy shapes, and here is quite zoom in, but in principle, yeah, this is a much smaller, this method, of course, so this is quite a zoom in picture. So you can practice freehand just by doing these very easy shapes, okay? And I highly recommend to do that before going to more complex shapes. So do that, or do what I said, what I shared with orcs. You can do something more like fire or something like that, and this will start creating your confidence, start having more brush control, and start knowing how your brush and the paints, and start finding the right dilution of the paint, and getting used to use the brush to do some drawings. Then we go to more complex freehands, and these are more patterns, and I will show you pictures here of the harlequins. Here the first thing when you do this type of patterns is try to choose the right miniature, or the right part of the miniature. For example, here if it's the first time that you do these patterns, first I recommend you practice first, if it's possible, on a paper, so that you can reproduce geometrical shapes quite easily on a paper. Okay, then once you have quite a practice on the paper, look for a part of the middle that is quite easy. For example, in that case, this is a quite easy method. The leg is very straight, so it's very easy to follow the shape. If you go, for example, on the other leg that is bended, it's going to be more difficult because you have to warp the form to adapt to the leg is bended. Okay, here, for example, this leg here is quite easy. The arm is more difficult. You have to start knowing how to warp here. So, and sometimes you have to break a little bit the geometrical thing. So you see that these are two diamond shapes, so two rhomb shapes, and this is almost a triangle. So you don't see that this is another better. So it's completely the form. It's to represent that the arm is bended, and you have to follow the shape, and this is quite a tricky one to do at the beginning. So I recommend, if you are doing patterns for the first time, try to do it on legs. The best ways to do these patterns is on flat areas like a cape or cloak. So example here it's quite difficult because this is a very bended one, but you can try to follow this one. It's going to be much easier. Again, if you follow here on this type of jacket, very easy way. This is like much easier than this one. This way, like, you have to follow this. The other thing, it's important also when you try to do these more complex patterns, try to combine these with parts of the miniatures that does not have too much complexity and are quite a flat color. For example, in the case that we go for a very bright blue pinkish color, I want to contrast with very dark type of color. This is a black highlighted with purple. So in that way, I don't saturate too much the miniature, and then you have the yellow as spot colors all over. Okay, but try to not saturate the miniature. If you go with that and then you put green, all the freehand will be diluted. Okay, so if you want the freehand to pop up, combine this with some flat colors, like can be a gray, can be a white, can be a black. Here you have, and for example here I put this picture because this like here it's quite easy. This part here is also quite easy, very flat. This is the best way to start doing freehand on these parts. When you start having control, when you start knowing how to do the freehand here, here, here on this arm that is very straight, then you can go for more complex parts. Okay, doing here, or doing this bended arm or this bended leg. Okay, but so, and the other thing is, in the case of harlequins, and this was a question also, it's coming, this video is also coming as a part of a question on making a kill team of harlequins. If you're painting harlequins, and this is the case, each miniature wants to have their own look. So you can take advantage and just paint, for example, straight legs if you want to go easier. In that case, I went for much complex. For example, on this case, you can only paint this leg. Or in this case, you can also paint this leg, or just here on the top. In this guy, you paint, for example, only the boot, or you paint like I did here, the two straight. So I was trying to find the straight parts, and I'm trying to minimize the parts that are more warped. Even here, okay, this one is much easier because I don't go down on the boot, that is the part that is bended. Okay, so try to find places where it's easier, and once you start getting experience, then you can go for you can know how to warp. Again, I recommend first I practice a lot on paper before going to the actual miniature. Try to first practice on paper, and you can start practicing on paper with pen, and then practicing on paper or on a flat plastic card with the brush. Okay. If you have problems, if you have problems to follow a quite geometrical pattern, the other ways to make, and this can be very interesting, is to make this type of this pattern here. Although looks more complex, in principle it's easier to do than doing that. Why? Because you just put some random rhombs or diamonds, okay? And the part that makes this more complex and interesting is to make this type of 3D shape and try to put this black around. But in principle, if you do patterns that are not completely repetitive, like are more random, like these ones, this can give the freedom to you to make more mistakes. Of course, I don't do all the diamonds perfectly from the first moment. So when I'm doing these diamonds, when I'm doing these diamonds, then I have to go back with the black sometimes and clean up some of the points. So be aware that if you don't do a perfect job from the beginning, when you can also come back and clean up. This is why it's important that the paint is quite thin, because if the paint is thick, you will give volume as well. So you will see the brush strokes, you will see the thickness of the paint. So if the paint is really thin, you will not appreciate that, and then you can clean up later on with the base color. Okay. Another type of patterns, and this should be put, this is a very easy one, and it's very effective. And once you have practice on doing easy geometrical shapes, you can also do this type of patterns. You look for any of the runes, and then you look for basic runes. To do that, a very thin brush with black quite diluted, and you just do that. And here, if you do a small mistake, you always can come back with. But these are really quite fast and easy to do, even easier than the harlequin patterns. So these are examples of just making these very fine touches. You can give a lot of character to a miniature. Okay, and these patterns that sometimes are looking easier, these patterns for me are one of the most, can be, you need a lot of practice with, and looks more complex than what they are in reality. Straight lines can be quite tricky, especially when you need to do a full unit with shields. And the difficulty here is coming from managing to keep the straight line as you want, and on top making them on the same thickness more or less. Okay, and this can be quite complex, and you can have to go back and forth. Here I will go back and forth with the black with the red and yellow. Another way to make it look or to help you is to make this type of damage, because if the lines are not fully straight, adding this damage, adding all this type of damage and dirtiness on the shield will help to dissimulate these straight lines. But this is quite a good exercise, and again I will go with very thin paint. Try first on a shield that you will not use, or on a piece of plastic that you will not use, to get experience on how to do straight lines. The first time I tried to do that, I had to reduce the shield several times before I managed to have more or less control on how much this type of bars or lines and the thickness and the distance between them. This can be sometimes a little bit complex, especially when you want to do multiple straight lines. And once you start dominating geometrical patterns, here just by combining different geometrical patterns, you can go for something more elaborate, and combining them will give you much better results. This, I will say, doing returning lines maybe is the most complex of the freehands. And this is, again, here there is not any tip to be able to do that. I recommend first, this will be more the last stage, when you have control to do lines, to do check patterns, to do diamond patterns. Then is the moment that you can start trying to practice more type of complex shapes. Again, if it's the first time you do that, try first on a piece of paper. So as in the case before, so you can go, once you have more brush control, then you can go for more complex designs, combining some very easy geometrical things like splitting this between blue and green with more complex freehand, typical from use on the Bretonian. So all of these, this one and this one, these are normally I get inspired, or I look a model that I have next to me to follow the shape. So if you are starting to doing this type of more complex freehand, I always recommend that you have an example next to you that you can follow. The case I was looking for something, and then you can modify it, but have something next to you what you can follow, especially if it's the first time that you're doing freehand. This one is much easier, but I always practice first on paper, on nozzle face, to be sure that it's making sense. So I'll try to make a sketch first on a piece of paper, and then you can go to something in that case Ariman. But in the case of Ariman, for me it was very interesting to do this type of freehand, and this quite zooming, because this cape was very flat. So when you have a very flat cape like this one, it's a very nice surface to practice your freehand. These are the type of meters that it's inviting you to do freehand, and this is why I use it on the back of the Ariman. Was so flat, this cape or this cloak, that I thought that was very easy. But this was a quite complex one. So as I said, I start with very easy ones. So I start practicing with some of the first ones that I share, these ones, or this type of more like animal fur. Then you can go to more something geometrical shapes. If you can do these diamonds here, the ones blue and green, you can do the more random diamonds. You can also try to practice doing some runes, and this can be easier than making diamond patterns. And once you start combining, once you can do the patterns quite easily. Combining them, you can make a look of quite a complex freehand. And then the last step is try to do more like drawings or something like this one here, or this one here, or doing a really complex patterns like this one here with the eye of Horus. So, and the last tip I want to share, if you don't feel that confident freehand, okay, you can always put decals, and here you have put two decals on this miniature. Especially when you do numbers, it's not that easy to make nice shaped numbers. In Block Ball team, I prefer to put decal, because then I know that the numbers are going to be with the same font, same size, and all will have the same. So this is a decal, but you can integrate the decal very easily on the middle if you have, for example, battle damage, and you put some of the damage over the decal. You can also use the decal to paint on top. So it's not a bad practice to paint on top of a decal, because this will make it look much more integrated. There are some techniques to apply decals. In that case, what I did is I apply gloss varnish, the decal, gloss varnish again, and then matte varnish. In that way, the decal looks completely integrated, and you cannot see where this decal is finishing, or starting or finishing, or how you want to do. You cannot see the borders of the decal, and this is because I use this technique. The same this one here, you will not be able to see. I have a little bit of glossiness because I apply gloss varnish over this here, but then I applied on top matte varnish, killing the glossiness quite a lot. If you apply 2 layers of matte varnish, you almost guarantee that you will kill the glossiness of the previous varnishes. But if you have battle damage or scratches, like in that case, put them on top of the decal. Make the decal look integrated of the miniature. And this is another way. So this is not freehand, but this is a way that you see I combine freehand, the bars or the strips, with the decal, and then using this damage you integrate completely the decal into the shoulder. And that's all what I want to share in this. I hope you find this video interesting, and these tips are useful for you. So just very fast summary. Be sure that you have a nice brush, you have the paint in the right dilution, and you practice first to have a good brush control. Okay, you have to know how much pressure you have to apply and how to control that you apply the right paint. Start with very easy geometrical shapes at the beginning until you get confidence, and when you start getting confidence, make it more complex over the time. Start doing some geometrical patterns. You can do some random runes, trying to imitate Celtic runes, or this type of elder runes or elfish runes. And the last part is trying to combine geometrical shapes to make more complex patterns. And at the end, once you get confidence, get inspiration from other paint jobs, get inspiration from pictures, from other things, to make your own freehands on the miniatures. Always practicing first on paper or on a part of the miniature that is not that important, so in the way if you make a mistake you don't have to repaint everything. You can paint and practice again to the next. Be aware that you will never do the freehand right the first time, and you will need to correct the freehand over the time. And if you follow some of my tutorials where I did freehands, you will see that sometimes I have to go back and clean up the freehand I have done. Okay. And yeah, and that's all what I want to share here. So I hope you find this video interesting. Please leave in the comments below if you have liked this video or not. Give it a like if you have liked the video. And as usual, thanks a lot for watching, and see you again later. Bye.